How you doing, guys? Welcome back. It's LSP. I'm here with Ben, and today we're going to be discussing the battle of the exchanges. And our intention today is to go through all of the exchanges that you see here on this slide. We're going to be talking about fees, we're going to be talking about mass adoption, regulation, safety, and so on. And we're going to see which ones are good, bad, not so good. But this all depends, obviously, on your trading style, what you're looking to do. And obviously, it's not as simple as it seems. Sometimes when we look at these things, immediately we think, oh, this platform charges X amount of fees. It's not too bad. But, when you dig a little bit deeper, it may seem that, those fees aren't as cheap as you thought they were. Whereas another platform that does on the surface, seem that those fees, for example, may be a little bit too pricey, are in actual fact not as pricey. So we'll go into, obviously the details, and then we'll let you make your conclusions, and we will present the data to you, along the way. So we can see here fees and stakings. I'm going to let Ben give you the details on this and kind of go through what you're looking at on this slide.
Yes. So this kind of ugly slide, well, not ugly, but there's a lot of data spread there.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
It's not too bad, but it's not too good. So what we have on the first column on the left is going to be the deposit fees, and then you have a slash, and then the withdrawal fees. And for all of the categories, you'll have the slash to separate the different categories in which we've selected the different things that we want to show. So the most important one is going to be the one second to the left, so the fee swap. So it's basically if you swap from BTC to Ethereum, you're going to have some basic fees. You're going to have some spread or a maker fee, depending on how you sell. And we want to take all of this into consideration. So it's going to be the total amount that you're going to pay. That's different from the market price if you did the thing yourself, which isn't really possible, but we're going to take everything into consideration. So first of all, well, the fee is a normal fee that the company takes to execute the order. So they say, I make this easy for you. I'm going to take a little bit of your money. And that's generally, you can find that everywhere. When you can't, you'll always or almost always find a maker fee. And this is also a fee that the company will be taking, depending on if you sell it at market price or if it's a sell or a put. Depending on how you sell it, you're going to have a either maker or taker fee, and then you'll also find a spread. And a spread is the difference between the current market price of that asset and the price that you buy or sell that asset for. As we know, cryptocurrency prices, they move all the time, and when you're about to buy something, the company will lock in the price for you to be able to buy at the price that you see on the screen. And to avoid losing money doing this, companies take a spread. And this spread is more or less big depending on where you're actually executing the trade. So we've highlighted in green the ones with the best scores out of all of the exchanges, and in red, the ones with the worst score. So for example, you see that the lowest fees and maker fee and spread is going to be on Huobi and FTX. So if you're trading, Huobi and FTX will definitely be good platforms for you. And the highest ones are on Nexo, which is actually funny because Nexo does promote having zero fees. This is actually, they're allowed to do this because spread isn't considered a fee. It's like a security amount that a exchange can lock for to avoid losing money on your trade. So as I was explaining before, they lock that certain they lock that certain price for you to execute the trade, and that certain price will be less favorable because they don't want to be losing money on your trade. So Nexo take 2%, Crypto.com takes 0.25%, Celsius takes 1%. And we see that often when they promote having zero fees, that's when there's the biggest spread. And when there's no spread, there's high fees. Generally, the fees are taken somewhere. They're always taken somewhere. It's just depending on how clearly do they show where the fee's taken to you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and more like, just to add to this, it's very important when you're looking at any of these exchanges or even anything to do with cryptocurrency or trading, even traditional finance, stock markets or whatever, when you're dealing with brokers, exchanges, or some sort of platform that you're using to place a trade or place an investment or buy or sell something, you see in the example of Nexo, you see these 0% fees and you think, wow, this is fantastic. But that is such a fantastic and clever example, of how you get stung on fees and actually not realize that you're being stung on fees. And this is why it's so important to make sure that you do your own research, to really look into, these platforms, these fees, read, the paperwork that people just don't want to read, and go into it, ask the questions, speak to customer support, go through this painstaking process to make sure that your money isn't being taken from you, because these fees add up. They absolutely do. They do add up, and by the time you've finished, there may be, for example, if you're an active trader, a couple of $100 out of your account, per month. That's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
So go on. Sorry, Ben.
Oh yeah, there's also the staking part. So we're separating, like on the left is going to be interesting things for people that trade and that want money on and off platforms and just swapping everything all the time to get the best rates and profit off the market's volatility. And on the right is going to be more for people that just want to put their money into somewhere and just wait it out. And if you want to put your money into a certain cryptocurrency, then the best performing platform was Kraken and the worst performing platform was Coinbase. And with the native token of the app, which is usually useful for premium or getting better tiers, the best was Swissborg and the worst was Celsius. And if you want to be staking stable coins, so like USDC, the best will be Swissborg if you're premium, and the worst will be Coinbase. And all of those you can generally, these are all up to rates, which means that you can get it if you spend a certain amount of money in the native token most of the time, or a certain percentage of your portfolio has to be in that native token, or all of these different companies and platforms have their own way of giving you these rates. But we just went for the maximum rate that you can have. And then if you really want to dig into it, you'll have to look at the rate that you can have with your means, because not everyone will be able to reach these rates.
Yeah. And just a quick example to illustrate that. For example, Coinbase, has the plus version, of their fee. So depending on if you have Coinbase or Coinbase Plus, will depend on whether or not your fees are what you see here or lower. Okay. So
yeah, that's important.
Yeah, and this applies to quite a few of these exchanges. So again, it's important that if you do visit some of these exchanges, then make sure that you're doing that research, look into it, to get the best out of all of these exchanges. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to be discussing regulations, environment, security, and risk. Now, obviously, these are big topics, and obviously, when you are engaging with these exchanges, you want to make sure that they are sticking to regulations. More importantly, have very high security, and they're dealing with risk the way that they should be, because ultimately they're dealing with your money. They are keeping your money safe, and you don't want to be putting your money with an exchange, where your money could potentially just vanish, overnight. Nobody wants to see that. And we do see in the cryptocurrency market, obviously this does happen, unfortunately, and it has happened. So with the ones that we have here, which are, the most, I'd say the most well-known, we have their headquarters. So obviously Coinbase is in the United States, Binance is in the Cayman Islands, Celsius, London, Kraken, United States, Huobi is in Seychelles Islands, FTX is in the Bahamas, Nexo and Swissborg are both in Switzerland, and Crypto.com is in Singapore. And you can see straight away something that stands out is the United States, London, and Switzerland. Okay, and Singapore as well. But the main countries, for example, the big ones: United States, London, Switzerland, Singapore. These ones are very strong with their regulation. Whereas Cayman Islands, the Seychelles, and the Bahamas, their regulations are not as strong. And this is probably why, and this is an assumption on my part, but this is probably why, Huobi, FTX, and Binance choose to use these countries, because I'm not going to say it helps them get around regulation, but it helps them to achieve, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve at a much quicker pace. And I guess on the flip side of that, because I actually have looked into FTX a little bit closer, it helps them to promote regulation in in this case FTX, the Bahamas, for example, because the owner of FTX is really pushing to help the Bahamas, understand what the regulation is in the cryptocurrency market, and to really help the Bahamas put a structure in place for regulation for cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of variables involved, but you like I said, the United States, London, Switzerland and Singapore, the big ones, that's where you're going to find the strongest, sort of regulation. And then carbon offset and green initiatives. Some people care about this, some people don't. I think besides going through all of these, you can see them for yourselves. I think we'll just quickly touch on this. For some people, this is a big deal, and not to go into this too much. Some people don't care, some people do care, yes. But if you look at the companies themselves, I think for me, if a company is showing that they are at least making an effort, to be concerned, or at least making an effort, to consider this, then I think that's always a good thing, so we'll kind of leave it at that. And then we'll go to security and risk, which is obviously a very, very big deal. And Ben, I'm going to let you, talk us through the security and risk.
Sure. If I can just add one thing,
Of
something
course.
that really surprised me when I was doing the research for the carbon offset and green initiatives is that the best one is actually Binance. And that really surprised me because it felt like most of the time the companies that were involved are the ones that were like preaching customer wealth, like growing people's wealth with staking and stuff like that, and maybe taking a little bit more fees as well.
Yeah.
And the others like Binance, Huobi, and FTX, I was expecting them not to care too much about the environment and stuff like that because they're really like showy. They're in your face. They're in the Cayman Islands, just showing you zero fees and then hiding it and like doing the most to
and what's
make the most money while people do as well.
Yeah. What's interesting about Binance as well is that they almost come across as a little bit brazen as well. Like they just don't care.
Yeah, but they're actually the best in the environment. They have a whole like I'll let you like type Binance Fund and you guys will see how much they're involved with. It was really impressive. I was stunned when I read this.
Yeah.
In terms of security and risk, now this like all of these exchanges, they're safe. You're not going to be they're not going to be disappearing from one day to the next. They're big enough for that not to be a risk. But some others you probably would consider that a risk. Now in our choices, we don't have this because obviously Coinbase, Binance, Celsius, they're big brands that can't just vanish. But be careful where you do put your money because not every company is like this. And the staking risk so is low for everyone because generally if they lose your money by doing a bad trade, you won't even see it in your account. It will just be reimbursed straight away. In terms of transparency, it's always good to know where your money goes, how it's dealt with, what's happening, and being able to find that information on the internet was a big part of classifying these. Coinbase is really transparent. They have a whole transparency report, but this is also because they're a listed company on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, so they do have to abide with a more strict accounting delivery. They have to show what they do, but that does make them more transparent. So they were definitely the best on that part. And in terms of staking conditions, what we took is how much time you have before you're able to withdraw, if there is a maximum amount that you can stake, and the safety is like how safe they are you going to lose? And this was a no for everyone. No one got an S, but some of them got a C. C is choice. Are you able to stake whatever you want, or is there a very restrictive choice? Can you stake stable coins and crypto? Can you stake native coins and stable coins and crypto? What can you do? And FTX was definitely the worst on the staking part, but that's not what they're here for. So I didn't highlight them as red.
That's important. That's important to really emphasize that FTX. I mean, they it's practically staking really isn't their thing at all.
Yeah. And I think we can switch to the next slide.
Yep. So mass adoption potential, obviously a big deal. We want to see these exchanges. And it was actually interesting when we were doing this and going through this, when we were putting this together, I actually made a comment about the countries available because when you look at the data like this, and I'll kind of just go off topic for a second and point something out. When we engage with the cryptocurrency space, we forget that we're looking at data in compartmentalized ways. We might be looking at one thing, or we might be looking at something else, but we never really take the time to put data together like this. So we can just kind of look at it as a snapshot. But when we do, you start to see a pattern and you see something that really stands out. And in this case, if you look at the column right to the right, countries available, isn't it amazing to think that in such a short period of time, of all of these exchanges, or at least you have all of these exchanges that are in 100 plus countries, available in 100 plus countries, and in some cases 200 plus countries, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. If you look at traditional finance and how long it took for traditional finance and some of the infrastructure for traditional finance to go global, and the speed in which that took, and how cryptocurrency has literally done that in a fraction of the time, I think that's absolutely incredible. But in terms of beginner friendly, how friendly are these exchanges, in terms of usability, in terms of being able to just use them straight away? Are they difficult? Are they mind numbing? Sometimes when you go to an exchange, you find yourself confused. So you can see that Coinbase, Celsius, Kraken, Nexo, and Swissborg, they all scored very highly in this regard in terms of their sort of user friendliness, with FTX, Huobi, and Binance being quite difficult. Now, the interesting thing about Binance, and I will point this out, is that there are quite a few different ways in which you can use Binance. So you can use Binance, in a simple interface, or you can use, Binance in another 2 or 3 ways where you can have, it's either simple, sort of medium-ish, or really advanced, where you can have a lot of different features going on. So there are at least options with Binance, but I still think that Binance can still be very, very challenging to use and quite confusing. Social media presence and number of users, again, Coinbase obviously huge, Binance massive, Celsius not too bad, but you can see of all of these, the biggest on the list, what do we got? Is Coinbase. Yeah.
Binance. I think the main highlight of this is how reachable are they? If you go on internet, if you go on Twitter and you type cryptocurrency, which ones will be there first, and which communities will be more present from their own exchanges?
Yeah.
Like, how much awareness do they have on social media from their own community? And I think generally you'll find that the younger audiences, so the trading type, which will generally be younger, will have more presence on social media, and therefore they can really carry the brand in an easier manner than the other brands. Like, let's take Swissborg, Celsius, where people are there but not as much because it's not the same demographic. So
Yeah.
really the number of people that you have online fighting for your brand, depending on how many people you have, will show, first of all, the whole interaction that you have with your community, and also the potential growth that you can have. So we can see here that the smaller ones have more potential growth than the bigger ones, and
Yeah.
that's also interesting to know.
Yeah. And obviously support reputation. You can see the ones in green: Kraken, Huobi, Swissborg, Nexo. They came out on top with the others. And just remind me, Ben, support reputation, we're talking about.
So it's like how fast they answer. It's
Sorry.
the
Okay.
quality of the answers. Is it are you with a robot? Stuff like that,
Yeah. I just wanted to
How
make sure.
accessible.
Yeah, because I remember we were doing something else. So, I mean, obviously support is a big deal, especially, and this actually brings something else up in the cryptocurrency space. I was reading an article recently somebody posted in one of the groups that I'm in. Very interesting article that 40%, of people that were asked what brought them into cryptocurrency, it was actually education, which I think is very interesting because,
Wow.
a very, very interesting article, because when you look at support, if people do not have a good support system, let's say these exchanges don't have a good support system, they're not there to give users quick responses to help them with their technical problems and so on, it puts them off. It really does put them off, and they have a really, really bad, poor, terrible experience, with cryptocurrency, and it puts them off and they just want to kind of avoid it. And then they negatively talk about crypto and so on. So, having a good support structure is very, very important. So moving on, we're going to go through some overall rankings, in terms of what we see here: regulations, security. And you can see in terms of regulation, Celsius and Swissborg Crypto.com, straight to the top. FTX, Huobi at the bottom, unfortunately in this case. And then in terms of overall security, Celsius right at the top, Swissborg right at the top, and FTX in this case, at the bottom. So Ben, do
Yeah.
you want to add anything to this slide?
I do think it's important to know that this doesn't mean that the platforms aren't safe. It's just that compared to the others in the criteria that we did choose, they're a bit less or a little bit less involved,
Yeah.
and a little bit less green and a little bit less everybody friendly,
Yeah. And I think as well, it just means I think what this does illustrate is that the ones that scored higher, I feel, are making more of an effort and doing more, as
and
opposed
they
to
probably have more fees.
as opposed to the ones that scored lower. Doesn't necessarily mean, as you said, that that they're no good, or that they have terrible security, or they're not adhering to regulations. It just means that they're doing enough, and probably just over and slightly over, or maybe 10 to 20, maybe 30% over, but not really going the extra mile because they may be focused on something else that they believe more in, to push more products or services or whatever for their holders or customers.
And you'll notice all of the ones that do
Oh,
take a
sorry.
little bit of fee. No problem. The ones that do take a little bit of fee are generally either first or second. It's like, and Coinbase is interesting to note that we've been taking Coinbase the normal, not Coinbase Pro.
Yeah.
So if you do take Coinbase Pro and apply it here, we'll score much better, like overall with the fees, regulations, security, and everything. It will be like top 2 or top 3. But in that particular case, as we took the normal Coinbase, it wasn't really user friendly. It did have a lot of fees, and it did change its ranking.
Yeah.
But that's good to know.
So overall ranks for fees, overall ranks for staking. And just a quick note as well, side note, if anybody's watching the video and they don't know what staking is effectively where you're staking your cryptocurrency, and you are being paid a fee for that in terms of percentage return. So just to give you a real world example, you put your money into a savings account, and then you're getting a percentage return on your, on your savings. It's very similar. So you can see overall rank for fees is Coinbase right at the bottom, and then obviously FTX in terms of their fees, very low fees, with all of the others scoring accordingly. Crypto.com, did very well in this case. Huobi, it's surprising actually. You can see FTX and Huobi, Crypto.com. What I find interesting about this actually, and what did surprise me when we were looking at the fees, you would expect that some of these larger companies, for example, Coinbase, which is huge, absolutely huge, would be able to afford and at least have the ability to offer lower fees, but they don't.
Well, they choose not to. It's like they have high fees on the normal Coinbase and low fees on the Pro Coinbase.
Yeah.
So depending on if you want to have an easy life or if you want to complicate yourself, you'll choose whichever Coinbase you prefer, and then you'll have access to different perks. It's like a whole different platform.
But I think, but I think what this does as well, Ben, is it forces companies like FTX or Huobi, some of these other, sort of lesser known exchanges, to up their game. And then eventually what I think is going to end up happening is that some of these exchanges will up their game to such a degree that ultimately companies like Coinbase and Binance and some of these larger exchanges will have to, ultimately lower their fees to be in line with these up and coming exchanges that are really challenging, these giants, to lower their fees effectively, because they're like, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it for you, type of thing. And then in terms of overall rank for staking, Swissborg right at the top, Nexo coming sort of second. FTX is important to note here. The reason the score is so low is because their staking is practically non-existent. It's not
their thing.
Yeah, it's just not their thing. It doesn't reflect poorly on them in that sense. It's just it's not something that they sort of focus on. But you can see the rankings. Obviously Swissborg is very highly favored in that sense. Nexo same, but again, really want to emphasize in terms of staking, there was a lot of up to percentages. There are a lot of variables in terms of different types of accounts, premium dependence, incentives and so on. There's quite a few variables that depend on, what percentages that you get. So it's important to make sure that if you are researching these exchanges and looking into these staking options, because maybe that's what you're looking to do and that's, your focus, make sure that you really do your research and make sure that you're looking into all of the variables, because depending on what you're trying to do and which account or which of these variables you're going for, it will depend on what that staking percentage ends up being, at the end. All right. Mass adoption. Go for it, Ben.
So mass adoption, here we can see that, and this is once again, I'll remind, it's depending on the criteria that we did choose. So if you want to have your own criteria for what is important for you, you can definitely also build the sheet. But it's just like, for us, we've explained everything, why we thought that it was important, and I think it's understandable. You can obviously tailor your own needs and wishes if you want to, if you don't care about the company being ethical, if you don't care about the staking, you'll have different approaches. But basically, the best for traders will definitely be FTX, because that's the biggest mass adoption potential for anyone that wants to trade cryptocurrency. It's not really easy to use, but it's the cheapest and it's the fastest, and you'll have almost. Is it the lowest fees or is it Huobi? I think it's there's something.
It might have been Huobi,
Yeah.
I think.
Anyway, it's one of the two. So basically, that will be for traders and everyone who wants to buy and sell often.
Yeah.
And Kraken is also very, very optimal for mass adoption because it does have a big presence and it's really easy to use. And even if you do pay fees, generally people just don't see it or don't really care.
Yeah.
So the everyday person, they're just going to buy Bitcoin with $100. They're going to see $1 fee. They're going to be like, oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Because they don't know that other platforms that are more complicated to use will offer less. So that's why both of them ranked really high.
Yep.
And then we have Binance and Swissborg. Kind of the same. Binance is going to be for the trader. Swissborg is going to be for the staker. And then Celsius and Nexo.
Yeah.
Probably because of their fees and stuff like that. And in the next slide, we show everything, how everything was calculated. And you see, it's not a very pretty board, but I mean, depending on what you think is most important, you can go down into the second columns, and here you can really find whatever is important to you, which company ranks best. So, for example, if the most important thing to you is going to be, I don't know, the staking of Ethereum, well, then you're going to go straight to Kraken because Kraken has up to 7%. And you're going also to look at how they give that 7% because often you have to do something to be able to get that 7%. But
yeah,
in that case, they're the ones who have the biggest up to. And yeah, overall rankings for everything. And you've got the whole fees and the whole package here.
Yep. So you can
I think we can try and play a little bit. So for example, ASP, you're a trader, or when you do trades, what's going to be the most important things for you and which is the best company depending on the most important things?
So for me, it's the lowest fees. I mean, I'm going straight for FTX, to be fair. FTX or Kraken, to be honest. Not Kraken, sorry. Let me
Huobi.
Either Huobi or FTX. Yeah, my brain's not functioning, but
yeah, that's 1, 2.
Yeah. So ultimately, as a trader, okay, you're predominantly in and out of the markets very, very quickly. We're not here to, say, for example, buy Bitcoin. Let's say my investment strategy was to buy Bitcoin and then, every month continue to add to my position, on a regular monthly basis. That doesn't matter to me. I would just, fees are almost irrelevant. You, like Ben was saying, you pay $1 here, $1 there. It's no big deal. But as a trader, you might be looking to maybe take 1, 2, 10, 15 trades a week, in and out, very active, constantly in front of the screens, always engaging with the cryptocurrency market. When you're doing that and you're always trading, buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling, and in some cases transferring cryptocurrencies as well to, various wallets and so on, your fees really do add up. So for example, if I was to use, if we look at the tables here, top left, fees and staking, right, rates, and we look down the fees. Let's say I was going to use Kraken at 1.5%, which is a fee swap. Sorry, not fee swap. I'm looking at the wrong section.
Yeah, that's a fee swap. Yeah.
Yeah.
1.5 and make a fee of 0.18. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, taking Swissborg, for example, as a trader, if I spend my time trying to trade on the Swissborg app 10, 15, 20 times a day, I mean, my fee bill is going to be insane, absolutely insane. It makes no sense for me to be using Swissborg as a trading platform to be trading constantly. But it is important to note as well that, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier about doing your own research and making sure that you really pay attention, because if you are, for example, Genesis Premium, then obviously those fees are reduced dramatically. Okay. So I wanted to throw that in there, but just as an example, what we're saying, as we are looking at these right now as a standalone user, somebody who's just fresh to, for example, Swissborg, it just doesn't make sense to be using Swissborg as a trading platform. Whereas, FTX, for example, or Nexo, or Huobi, all of the ones that offer lower fees are more geared towards trading. Whereas Ben, you're predominantly, a more sort of an investor type.
Yeah.
Give us an example of which sort of exchange you'd be looking to be using.
So yeah, for example, what I like is, first of all, to be able to do everything on the same app. That's quite important to me. I don't want to have to move stuff from different places just to be able to. I already have like one app and MetaMask, and that's too much for me. So like I want to be able to
Yeah.
to deposit and withdraw from the same place. So that's relatively important to me. So I'll be looking at, for example, Nexo, Kraken, and Swissborg, top three. I don't really care about the fee swap, because if it's just a one-time buy and then I leave it for a year, well, I'll pay 1%. It doesn't really matter. And I want the staking to be high on stable coins, because, for example, I'd like to be able to take whatever savings I have and throw them into different types of stable coins and just stake them from there. So here I'll be looking at also Nexo or Swissborg. And then I'll just go with whatever's in the regulations, because I think that having a strong regulation, so Switzerland is quite important, or United States or London, but someplace that's not going to be in any trouble in the future whatsoever, regardless of the regulations. So definitely I'd be using either Nexo and Swissborg. And when I look at the fees, I do like it when it's transparent and everything's shown, even if I'm not asking for it. So a relatively obvious choice. But the two of them would have been, would have been a tight battle.
Yeah. And I think as well, I'll just quickly add that none of these exchanges are going to fulfill all of your needs. Okay. There is no one exchange out there that does everything. There just simply isn't. It's like if you have, or you go through, you're going to purchase something from Amazon, for example, and you read the reviews. The reviews may be amazing, but there's always going to be, people who bought that product that will find, a fault with it, or just don't have, or have maybe a poor experience or something. It's not one fits all, or one exchange does absolutely everything perfectly. Yeah. So again, it is very user dependent. It is depending on what you're trying to do, what you're looking to accomplish, what your investing or trading style is, what your focus is on, depending on whether you're going to be staking or whether you don't care about staking, whether you're looking to trade or not, and so on. So really important to make sure you do the research, look into all of the exchanges, make sure that you're reading the fine print, and we've done our best here to, put as much information and present it to you, in a, we hope, a clean and easy way to understand. So you can at least kind of pair some of what we've said here today with some of your own research and make an informed decision.
All
right.
Yeah, it helps.
Good. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up, and we hope everybody enjoyed the video. So I'm LSP, and this is my good friend Ben, and we look forward to speaking to you in the next video.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.